Meanwhile, I've had a bit of an update with Tom. He's coming at 11:30, so and he asked me for your names to try and sort out your Bibliu access, which I thought was really nice, isn't it? He's a really nice gentleman. Oh, so Claire, you're forbidden access. That sounds like you've done something really wrong. That does.
No, it's quite upsetting. I am a bit worried that I have done something wrong, but I go into Moodle, click library, I click Bibliu, and then it just says no.
That's the same as I'm getting. So it's the Athens forbidden code.
Yeah.
So it's just the same as last time when it all went crashing down. So Moodle's fine, but Teams and Bibliu for me are not working.
Open Athens has always been my issue though, because I've not used Bibliu before, but it was Locate or something, and it was Open Athens which always caused the issue.
When Tom comes, will you let him know as well, because then that can help. And I, as you probably have gathered from this, Joanne and Samsio are just brilliant. Honestly, you could not have better people looking after anything they can do. And I've emailed them this morning with the register and saying about the problems, and they're like, please express our apologies. I mean, they do take responsibility, but I just feel for them because it doesn't feel like there's an awful lot.
Like I find it perfectly easy to use CMI. I'm perfectly happy using CMI, and you know, it shows you how to, you know, it's got all the references and stuff. So I find it perfectly easy. So I'm happy not using it, but it would be nice to.
Just in terms of like what we're providing for you, you should have access to some other things. So actually, if we do, so we'll continue to try and pursue it anyway and see. But yeah, there's a lot of things in life that shouldn't be as hard as they are, aren't there? Things like accessing library resources are one. Yeah. Okay. Right, so on to task 4 now. Wow, okay. So we've got here quite a few different problem solving and decision making techniques. So we've got 150 words for each of these. Just to have a scan through oh my goodness, we have so many to choose from as well. So you're going to pick 2. Are these looking familiar to you, any of them?
Only one.
It's my dream.
It's your who said it's their dream?
Mine.
I thought I was sad liking Victorian Baroque clothes, but blimey, you know.
I think Claire just offered to write this for all of us then.
I know, I shouldn't be recorded saying this, but Claire, there is a business in doing that.
Oh, I know. Consultancy. Yeah. No, this is what I do day in, day out.
Is it really?
Yeah. So I'm a lean expert, so I issue hours on whiteboards in offices. Plan, do, check, act is part of my everyday life. Pareto, which is the 80-20 rule.
Like, just out of curiosity, like, how far does this go? Like, you haven't got whiteboards at home or anything, have you?
Not yet. I'm waiting for one to arrive. But with the technological world, we've got virtual whiteboards. So there's a software called Miro, which do something. So not on there. Domaic, which is the life cycle of a project that I work on. And yeah, we've got all of the Fishbone templates and everything all on there. And quite a lot of these I use, but are also used in the risk world, and things like that. So, but this, I just saw that slide and I was like,
brilliant. Okay, well that's not maybe a typical reaction, but it's good to know. Anyone else? Right. Okay. So what we've got is on this, we've got Claire is our fullback expert. Okay. So we're only going to ask Claire where we absolutely are stuck. But what I'd like us to do is try not to actually. I'd like to see between us if we can figure it out. Okay. In terms of what you've heard of. So has anyone heard of fishbone analysis before?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Who have we got yes-in?
Amelia.
Okay, Amelia, do you mind kicking off then and telling us about, just talking us through the fishbone? I'll put the slide up at the right time.
It's been a long old time since I've done this. So this was part of my sort of first apprenticeship program like 4 years ago. So I'm going to be like extremely rusty. But I think in a nutshell, from memory off the top of my head, it's about understanding all of these different options available to you, I think. And sort of how that feeds back to a problem or that it's something that you're trying to solve. I think that's as far as my memory is taking me. So I appreciate that is poor, but I'll remember it. But yeah, more to sort of re-jog my memory on for sure.
And did you actually apply it to projects when you were doing it on your first apprenticeship?
I don't think so. No, it was just part of like a package of things that we discussed, to different models and matrix that you could use, similar to this, I guess. So, yeah, I've not applied it since.
Okay, and that's so. A good overview. It's very much. It is used as a sort of an academic way of looking at problems. Has anyone used it in practice?
I have, very briefly.
Okay.
For very specific problems, rather than anything, rather than general project management. If we do have a specific, generally time-related problem, and we just need to figure everything out, we use it. But I've never been great at it because I've never particularly warmed to it. It doesn't help me figure things out, if that makes sense.
I think it's sort of used as a checklist. So at GE Aviation, when I teach them, so they're doing like a degree apprenticeship, this is something they're always coming up with. So I think it's quite a standard in certain sort of process-driven manufacturing type environments, because it covers everything off. So it sort of means if you're exploring a problem that you're not going to miss anything out. And it's sort of looking at how every single aspect of it contributes to that problem. So it's like a visual checklist, I suppose. Would you say, expert Claire, is there anything else that needs saying about fishbone?
No, not really. That seems to cover it all. It can be used for a multitude of things, and it's just a way to take people's comments. So you'll usually get the problem in the head of the fish. You'll usually get symptoms, which you can then really drill down into the root cause, as opposed to just it hurts because it uses all of my budget, but why? And you can really drill down into the but why piece on it.
Okay, fabulous, thank you. Okay, so is anyone familiar with Plan, Do, Control and Act? Oh, Louis, your letter flashed up there. Did you? I don't know why. Have you actually used it?
No.
No, I was being a bit hopeful there. Okay, have you even heard of it?
No.
I love honesty. Okay.
This feels a bit like Agile.
Oh, go on. Well, yeah, because it is sort of almost test and measure a little bit.
Yeah, it's just a sprint cycle, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're going to do it, you do it, you check it, and then you change things.
Yeah, absolutely. As simple as, like, it's just a really easy way of sort of just piloting something, really. Anyone got anything to add on that? It tends to be quite small scale before we do it big style. That's the idea with it, that we're just sort of trying. It's a really nice way of sort of framing projects as well, in terms of change projects, sort of structuring them. Anything to add? The other Claire, do you like fantasize about going to Japan and like learning this from the experts or anything?
Oh my god, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I went when Amazon did tours around the fulfillment centres when they were able to. They use a lot of this. You could see it all up on the walls and things.
Yeah, I did the Oxford mini plant tour. They do the same.
I've done that as well. I do like a factory tour. Yeah.
They do the factory tour, and it's brilliant, because whilst we were there, the line stopped, so there was an issue on the line, which then you saw all of the ants coming in going, what's the problem? And it was like, oh my god, this is real life.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting to see it in a different environment, because how I work, I don't quite get the same, because it's in design, we don't have that same impetus to it's got to be fixed now. So to actually see, like, in a manufacturing environment, it was I could talk about this all day long.
Because it was with that, it was just in time, but also just in order, wasn't it? So it's all about sequence as well. It was really interesting. Yeah. Okay. That's not right, Saddos. Obviously you're not one, but yeah. Okay.
Totally.
It's fascinating. Oh, okay. So has anyone heard of the 80-20 principle?
Yeah, I think I covered this off in one of my previous assignments, I think.
Yeah, go for it.
I think it can be sort of applied in all aspects of life, isn't it, really?
I was going to say that. It's sort of one of those almost like the rule of life, isn't it?
Yeah.
So how does it work?
I think when I first think about it, I think the easiest way to sort of demonstrate is when you think about, leading a healthy lifestyle, 80%, eating well, 20% treats, kind of thing. So I guess in terms of, I think it was in the stakeholder management one, I included it about spending and focusing 80% of the time on key stakeholders that are key decision makers, really. And communicating with them, and then the 20% on the other stuff, sort of thing. So yeah, that's quite my basic understanding, I guess. But I think a lot of us probably apply it without realising we do, really.
I think when you're thinking rationally and you use this, if there's almost like you're overwhelmed and you've got too much on, you realise that actually it's only a small proportion of what you do that sort of is the problem, isn't it? It's sort of almost been able to step back and analyse, isn't it, really, what you sort of, it's all about things being disproportionate, isn't it? And with degrees, it's a sense of if you want to get over a certain mark, it's a disproportionate amount of effort that you have to put in to get to the next level. So it's just this idea of things being disproportionate in terms of the effort and the results, and sort of understanding that, and then understanding how to prioritise accordingly. Has anyone else got any other examples of how they've used this, or how it's made sense of anything?
I think only a different kind of way of I use it is because what I do is lean and not Six Sigma. I aim to fix 80% of the problem. So I don't go in aiming to fix 100% of the problem. I go in with 80%, and then what will generally happen is fixing that 80% will fix the 20% as well. If not, you leave it to kind of settle for 6 months and then go back in and look at that 20% if it still needs fixing.
Yeah, I think this is almost, it takes some pressure off a little bit, doesn't it? Because it makes you feel like you don't have to do everything to get some good results. We only have to tackle part of it. But it's sort of working out which bits to do. Does that make sense has anyone got any questions on that? It's referred in lots of different ways. So you'll hear it as the 80-20 principle. Pareto's analysis is another way. But I bet you if you haven't heard of it before, I bet you'll start hearing about it now, because it's just one of those things when you're aware of, it's mentioned quite a lot. Okay, so the next one is this idea of a cost-benefit analysis. So in the work that you do, does anyone use this as a way of sort of assessing whether it's worth taking certain actions?
We do.
Okay, I'm going to silence you just for a sec. So Claire's, see if anyone else, not convened, but just let's anyone else use it?
I've got a little bit of understanding of it, because just for some of obviously most of our schemes are renewal schemes where we're just replacing a worn out road. But if we're doing an improvement scheme, so access, new pedestrian crossing or something, it's got to go through this process. You've got to ensure that the benefits to the public are worth the cost. Otherwise, it doesn't get a go ahead.
And how do you right? If you've got tangible like financial outputs, this is quite straightforward. But what do you do when because not everything can be quantified like that, can it?
Yeah, I don't know. It's not.
Oh no, sorry. I was sort of. It's just.
I'm sorry. I just know about the process. I'm not involved in it. I don't. Yeah, I don't know what scores, how they generate the scores. It must be, how many people it will benefit, I suppose, compared to the cost. But I think for every company there'll be a threshold where you've got to meet that threshold for the project to go ahead.
Yeah, and but there might be some that are almost, if it's sort of a life or death thing, that actually might take it up very differently, even if I think that the issue with this is you can't quantify everything, and because of that it's not necessarily always accurate. I think if it's just a purely decision based on do we buy a piece of equipment, that's very different to the sort of work that you're doing on this. So welcoming back the Claires, talk to me about your experiences of this. How have you managed to sort of like encapsulate all these costs and benefits?
Sorry, Claire, do you wanna? We have to use it for our business cases, but actually we've had real trouble because majority of our benefits are intangible customer improvements. So some of them can be cost related. So there are things within the HMT's Green Book, for example, environmental benefits can be quantified, not necessarily fairly, one might argue, and they are changing it. But we've ended up doing the financial benefits and the customer benefits, which is easier for us because customer is an imperative. So you have to consider that. But you look at we looked at different options for taking the project forward, how we'd procure it, and the outlays for it, plus but because our strategic objective was to improve the customer experience, one option, which was extremely cost effective, had negative benefits for the customer. So we were able to turn around and say that's not what we want to do because it doesn't fulfill the project. So we kind of almost have two tables of it, and also we've got some benefits and costs which equal each other out, because a benefit to the Treasury is a cost to the consumer in paying the charge. It's annoying to have to pay the charge, but we need the revenue. So.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I think with this, the benefit of using it is the idea that actually you are thinking something through. So you're considering from different perspectives all the different costs in theory, all the different benefits. The softer ones can be more difficult, but actually quite often can have something assigned to them in terms of some sort of value. And then there may be some benefits that are sort of almost out trump everything else, so even at the cost. But what it should do is allows you to make an informed decision as to which courses of action to go for based on a limited amount of resource. So that's where you use the cost benefit analysis. And yeah, it sort of shortcuts decision making based on quite rational factors actually. Now the next slide I've got is just wrong, because when I've looked at it on my printout, it's the same that we've just seen for 80/20, but I've called it something else. So that's very poor attention to detail. Have you heard of return on investment before? Do you use that in your projects?
I think I'm not involved directly, but it will have been taken into account. For instance, on High Speed 2, both as a result of the cost benefit analysis, while we installing the Japanese style trains, well, we've got to get a return on investment from all the members of the public using it, and I'm sure they would have done an analysis of over such return period, that's when they want to have made the return. So yeah, I'm not directly involved, but I can imagine for any public transportation project, their outset and then what they want that money to be returned by.
So did they decide not to use? So did they consider then the sort of Japanese style? Is it like the bullet trains?
I'm not entirely sure, because that was probably done about a decade ago. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure, but I know that we're not getting the trains that go that fast. Obviously they are faster than the current, but I imagine there was some analysis done to not go with the bullet trains.
Yeah.
It's because of our sorry.
What were you saying? Sorry.
Our tunnels are wrong. So it's better not to use a bullet train or something, but it comes down to the return on the amount you'd have to put in. It's just better not to use to make it. It just wouldn't benefit anyone.
Okay, so return on investment is about a time period. So yeah, it's about how long it will take us to recover our outlay. So a number of years ago, so every sort of, well, yeah, even the discounters now are doing the click and collect, aren't they? Because Aldi started doing it now, although £5 a head seems quite a lot to do that. But anyway, or £5 per shop. So Morrison's were quite late to the game with their vans and their home delivery. How long do you think Morrison's anticipated it would take to get their return on investment for investing in the home delivery service?
I'm expecting this to be quite shocking. Like, I'm assuming from that question it's probably a short amount of time, something.
Well, just have a guess.
A day.
That would be amazing, wouldn't it? Not quite. Oh, it is shocking for the other reason. 5 years.
Oh my God, it was either going to be one end of the spectrum or the other.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, God, that's so long, isn't it? So no wonder they really like stalled on deciding to do it. And I mean, they did it, obviously have done it a number of years ago now, but I remember reading at the time, thinking that's a really long time to get a return on investment, isn't it? Because I think as well, returns on investment, I think, depend on the situation that the business is in as well. And something with like Highways England's obviously got a longevity, so it's not so pressing. But actually, at the moment, for businesses that are seen to be under a lot of financial pressure, the return on investment has got to be short term. You know, it's or for the majority of projects, they're not going to sign things off that are too long term because they just are in a sort of financially vulnerable position. So, but why would Morrison's then do it? Then if it's going to take 5 years to get their costs back for all their vans and the infrastructure to do their sort of home delivery?
Because they'll lose too much if they don't.
There's a competitors that would be doing it and it would lose the market share.
Absolutely. So I don't think it was about gain, it was about protection, wasn't it? And I think the supermarket environment is a very aggressive marketing environment, isn't it, really, marketplace to operate in. So it's not necessarily about getting returns, it's more about stopping someone else eating into your market share. And I think actually that's where I don't think Aldi, because Aldi have always used quite a simple business model, haven't they? So it was only sort of in the pandemic they started to do these click and collects where they've got certain shopping sort of spaces where you can park in. And I think that again is a response to protect what they've got and not lose it rather than about growing. So I think that's the motivation. I'll check online about what the contents of this slide look like, because I've consolidated everything together, but we'll make sure the return on investment slide is correct in its content. So I am based on at least 80% of the slides being right, but that's still not good enough, is it? That's our Pareto analysis. So yeah, I'll get that one right to make sure it's correct for you on Moodle. Ooh, okay, OODA. Has anyone heard of that before? Our OODA loop.
I've heard of it, never used it.
Wow, and you're the expert, aren't you? Has anyone else heard of it? Just have a check through it. What do you think? How does it relate to the other things that we've seen? A bit more passive, isn't it, by the looks of it? You know, when you're observing, would it be in the same industry, or do you think you might use other industries?
I think it depends what you want the output to be. So when I learned about OODA, it was, you could almost have a peer observation, so somebody from a different discipline to come in and watch the process happening, or it could be somebody completely different. So if you're hoping for like a major organizational change, you'd get like a KPMG to come in and to do a bit of a business analysis as that kind of observation piece. But I think it's scalable on what the output actually is to how grand you go with it.
And in terms of how it relates to plan, do, control and act, is plan, do, control, act more about pilots with this one? Is it more about sort of once you've decided you're just getting on with it, so you're not testing it so much, you're sort of a bit more firm with the fact that you feel it's going to be something that works?
Yeah, I think this is almost that kind of continuous loop cycle. Once the process is in, then it's this constant loop to try and to try and make sure that that's still the right thing to be achieving.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, it's got some funky acronyms here, isn't we, with Uda? Right. Has anyone heard? So this is more sort of, I'm used to seeing this a bit in sort of almost like psychology, really. This ladder of inference. Has anyone come across this before in anything they've read or come across?
I think Jo covered this in one of her modules.
Yeah, I was going to say, because it's definitely on one of the other modules that have taught about this. Can you remember anything about it?
For stakeholder engagement, really, isn't it? Or for strategic leadership, getting people into the cult of belief, really. You're more likely to do it if it's within you, kind of thing, rather than just paying lip service to something. So it's getting people to believe in it. Okay,
and how do we, because this seems to be about selective perception, isn't it? This idea that actually it's almost like we've already defined what's going to happen and we sort of almost use evidence to support it. In projects, how do we get people to, what if that's not sort of helpful in terms of delivering on the project? How do we get them to change, to consider different data or change their stories about what's going on? Sort of a bit, this is a bit sort of quite deep, isn't it, really, in terms of psychology, because it's really about almost, we've just all got our stories about what we believe, and actually that is all very personal, isn't it? And then our responses to things are based on those personal stories that we've got, and then we almost just take everything to support that, don't we? And then based on that we take it a step further, and it's sort of bringing all that baggage, if you like, into the workplace, really, in terms of, you know, almost looking out for someone to do wrong if we've decided that they've, you know, that we don't trust them or something about them. So how can we challenge, because sometimes that's based on just a proportion of the information, we don't have the full story. Any ideas on what we can do to sort of bring more clarity or a fuller picture to this sense of processing? Because it is what you were saying about sort of almost stakeholders, isn't it, and about bringing in alignment.
I think how we've used it is you understand where they're coming from and their experiences as much as you can, so that you can understand how they're seeing things, and then you can either play into those assumptions. So you present things to them which support the assumption, you present what you want to in a way which supports their assumptions, and then kind of take them on that journey, or you challenge quite readily, and it depends on the type of person, and just bring in excess data and, you know, have that conversation about, to explore different experiences, and then they kind of talk themselves into your way of thinking. So we're doing it now with governance, trying to persuade people to have governance and understand where they're coming from, and then let them talk themselves through what we're presenting to them, so they can work out all the pitfalls and stuff, and then they decide that actually what we're doing is the best one. Okay. Is the best way to go about it, and then they behind, whereas with others it's better to do the other bit where you just kind of present it in a certain way for them.
Yeah. Does anyone is this making sense to anyone? Because I'm thinking of this almost in when we talked about the last module, it is like the sort of almost the assumptions that people might have, like the public, about the government being able to take my land or being able to do this, that, or the, you know, so it's sort of almost these assumptions that they're creating, or almost in some of the negotiations that we've spoken about, where the public consultations, that they're coming, aren't they, armed with certain beliefs and assumptions, some of which may actually have no basis, other ones may be through a second-hand experience that again may be inaccurate. So can anyone else relate this to how it might work for a project? Because we've got one good example there. Can you think of anything where you may need to challenge it with a different perspective or different data or experiences that you've done doing that? Who was it who gave the experience of the public consultation before? Who's been involved in public consultations? Because was it a couple of you, or was it just Daniel or Henry or Isaac?
Henry, I think.
I thought it was Henry, yeah.
Sorry, go on.
It's okay, just trying to catch you up. So, you know, before you've done some public consultations, haven't you?
Yes.
So what assumptions have people come in with that are absolute, that are not correct?
Plenty. Seems to be kind of the start of the discussions when they come in with a claim of something that's not true. I mean, we obviously base our designs on data and analysis, so it's kind of we had someone come in who was telling us that the peak flows of traffic were different to what we had in our design. So like it was a roundabout project, and they were saying that the morning peak traffic, so the route that most cars travel in the morning, is this way instead of the way that you've designed it. And it was just completely untrue. I don't know why they said that. That must have been their route that they travel, so they wanted that route improving as opposed to the route that we were focusing our design on. So it was, I guess, people come in without having a full understanding of where you've started and what work you've done today. And it is quite hard to explain and show all of the work that you've done today, because it obviously gets quite complex. And
yeah, that's what I was just thinking. So how are you able to like challenge that then, and what sort of is that on a one-to-one basis or?
Yes, we did have a designer, a consultant there, who was kind of able to explain the sort of methodologies and the design sort of theory that's gone into it. But yes, stubborn members of the public still won't do that, so it's quite hard, really. I guess you've just got to firefight a bit in a way.
But yeah. Thank you, and thanks for that example. And I think this is this is almost like on a softer side, this sort of problem-solving techniques, isn't it? When you're encountering resistance, but it's not. It's based on a distorted perception potentially, or a perception that needs reaffirming sometimes. So yeah, really good example. Thank you. Thanks Claire for giving us another one in the project environment. So we've got so many tools. So here, was it 2 or 3 that I said we needed to do in this? It's only 2, and we've got so many to choose from. So this is the last one we're going to look at collectively. Has as a acronym, which actually doesn't have any O's in it if you look at it. Has anyone heard of this one before?
Yeah.
Okay, talk me through then where you've come across it.
I think again in my apprenticeship, I think this is one that I've revisited before because it's so simple, and it just allows you to do, a quick sort of sense check almost of, what must this project achieve? What should it achieve? What could we do? So what opportunities are there, and what are they, I guess, the nice to haves? and what won't we do. So I guess that could be, you know, what would be deemed as scope creep. And I think, again, it's around managing stakeholders and expectations, really. So understanding wants compared to needs. And this can be a useful framework to sort of, I guess, you know, document that and just sit down and think about it, and manage those expectations as well, really.
Absolutely, yeah. That does, because this does look very straightforward. Has anyone got any questions about using this? Okay, so on this then, so you've got task 4, we've only got to pick 2. Was there, have you got enough, now you've had a brief explanation of all of a number of these, is there anyone who hasn't got 2 that they could pick and talk about how they'd use it for problem solving and decision making to manage a project? Okay. I think hopefully, because they're not massively in depth, they are a case of just explaining how they use and then applying it to your project and sort of talking about how you could use it in a particular scenario, project scenario. So we've got Tom coming at 11:30. What I'm thinking is we're going really well through the contents at the moment. We've only got task 5 left to do. So why don't we, I'm just sort of looking at what materials left on task 5. Shall we start again about 1:15? So it gives sort of 25-minute break. I'll crack on with task 5 and we'll see how far we get before Tom joins us. Does that sound okay as a plan? And then it shouldn't take much longer, and I'm hopefully sort of, depending on how long Tom's with us, I could finish after Tom's bit and then we're done for lunchtime. What sort of, does that sound okay? Okay.
Yeah, fine.
Brilliant. So I'll see you again at